One again, recap family. You know, while I was editing this recap, I was listening to the caller share her experience, and I got emotional all over again just editing the recap to bring it forward. Because while listening, when I got to the part where the caller got emotional and she broke down and started to cry, I literally felt her pain. Now, trauma is something that no one should ever have to go through, especially from your childhood days. Can you imagine going through such serious trauma where even as your adult days come around, you cannot trust people? And that is what happened with this episode. This Carla went through so much in her life that even as an adult, she couldn't trust anyone. She got married, had kids of her own, but her relationship failed, her marriage failed because she just couldn't trust her husband. All because of the trauma that she went through in her life. This one right here, family, is an extremely emotional one. Prepare yourself for it. Let's take a listen to this episode that was shared on Unstoppable Live.
Um, I was raised by my grandparents, and the reason for that was because when my mom was young when she got pregnant with us. I have a twin brother, and so she couldn't take care of us because first thing is she was in college, and when my grandmother went to where she was living and saw the condition she was living in with us, my grandmother decided, no, that's not happening. I'm going to take them. So she took my brother and I from my mom, and that kind of helped my mom to continue with her education. And so I did not know she was my mom. I thought she was my sister because I have an uncle who is only 2 years older than I am. So we just grew up like brothers and sister because I was the only girl that was there at the time in the home at the time. Something is when my grandmother took us from my mom, she couldn't even take us into my grandfather's house because he was so angry at my mom. Because Jamaican parents, they say, well, I sent you to school, I didn't send you to go breed. Exactly what my grandmother said, he said, right? And so he was extremely angry with her. And my grandmother had to take us to other family members to raise us until one day she said she got frustrated and she went and she got us and she sharpened a machete and she put my brother and I down beside my grandfather and said, you don't want them? Kill them, right? And she walked out of the house and left us there. She said when she came back hours later, she don't remember which one, but one of us was sitting on his knee and he was just rocking us. And then when he saw her coming in, he quickly put that one down, and that was where it started with my grandparents. Um, we were, I believe, at the time we were 6 months old, and so I lived with my grandmother basically from I was 6 months old. At age 6, okay, I have uncles who are not very much older than than I am, period. And at 6 years old, one of them started to molest me. And I didn't know what that was all about, but I was basically told because of the fact that my mom was not there with us, I was told by him that if you tell anybody, remember you don't have no mother, and if you tell mama, she's gonna put you out because you don't have it, and remember you don't have anybody or anywhere to go. So, of course, as a child, I don't want to live on the road. So I didn't tell anybody anything. I just kept I just kept basically, and kept this secret for years and years. And when I it happened basically every almost every night, almost every night until I was 15 years old. And when I going to school, I took my education as my solace. I every homework, everything, I was there. I was first in every class because I studied. When nobody else was studying, I was studying because I was going through hell and I needed something because I couldn't say anything to anyone. And my grandmother, she didn't suspect anything. Nobody suspected anything, right? So at age 15, I just couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't. And I ran away from home. I ran to one of my granduncles, my grandfather's brother's house. And when I got there, one of my older cousins started raping me, basically raped me. And because I ran away from home and I thought I didn't have anywhere else to go, I stayed and I stayed there until I was 16. And then I decided, no, I can't do this. This is just too much. I was still going to high school. Everything was just still going on for me. Like nobody knew anything. Like, I didn't tell my granduncle anything either. My cousins, which were his sisters, were living in the house. I didn't say anything to anybody. I just kept on going and doing, focusing on, I gotta get out of here. I gotta get something in my brain because I don't want to stay here. I want to become a teacher. That was what I wanted to become. I wanted to become a teacher. So I'm going to buckle down and I'm going to do everything that I have to do. So when that was going on, and I just couldn't take it anymore, I ran away again. This time I ran to Kingston, where my dad, who I was told was my dad, I went to live with him and he registered me into college because he saw my potential and everything. So he registered me into college. And so I started going to college, but I guess he figured he had to get paid. And so he raped me. He was just like, okay, when nighttime come, it was like, and my brothers weren't in the house, like, that was what was happening. It was just bad. It was terrible. And that experience I'll never forget, but I will also not let it destroy me. It, it continued for about a year. And while I was going to school, one morning I decided that I'm not coming back here. So one of my friends, when I went to school one day, she said, "What's going on with you? Why are you so quiet? Like what's going on?" And I said, I told that girl, my friend, what was going on. And she said, "Why don't you come live with me and my grandma?" So I did. I went and lived with my grandmother, with her grandma, and I stayed there with my friend's grandma and her until I was 18. And when I was 18, I immigrated to Canada. My One of my aunt took me to Canada, and I just like, okay, fine, I'm out of all of this. So therefore, I'm so happy. I'm out of this. I can relax and I can, do stuff. But didn't happen that way. Mm-mm. As soon as I get here, her husband decided, oh yeah, you are going to. Like, it's like I thought, my God, I cried night, I cried day, I cried because I thought, do I have a sign on my back saying, hey, rape me? Or just take advantage of me. And it became so bad that when my auntie would leave for work at night, as soon as she left the house, he would enter into my bedroom. And so I ran. So every night, I would walk out of the house as soon as she walked out. But you know something, it was so terrible. I felt bad that I had to leave the house because my younger cousins who were girls were living in the house and they weren't his biological children. So I feared for them also, that if he's doing it to me, if he's trying to do it to me, then he would want to do it to them. And so I just couldn't deal with any of that stuff. I hated my mother. I hated my mother because I thought if my mother was my mother and was there for me, I would not have gone through what I was going through, because then I wouldn't be living with my grandparents and I wouldn't have to be running from one house to another, to another, to another. There were times when I was younger when I couldn't talk to boys, because if I talked to boys, my the perpetrator would beat me and would say, you're not supposed to be talking to boys. If I walk home from school with boys, I would get a beating from him, not my grandmother, him. Like he was jealous. He was jealous to the fact that I was talking. So I became a tomboy. So you find 10 boys, and that one girl was me. That was me. I became a total tomboy, and I just anything. When I went to school, I basically dressed like a boy, like everything. And when I came to Canada, that was when I decided to change. Hey, drop the tomboy issue and be a girl, because that's who you are. Well, people, I can tell you this. When at nights when I was leaving to go talk to a family friend, and the family friend happens to be a guy who was way older than I was. And I was so naive and stupid, um, that I was looking for comfort. And of course, and I can tell you this honestly, it happened once, one time, out of my crying and my this and my that, and I became more vulnerable. And of course, ended up sleeping with this guy. And I told my aunt what happened with her husband, not knowing I was pregnant for the other guy. And when I told her what was happening, because he was like, she was complaining about something. And he said, yeah, yeah, yeah. Because every night, as soon as you leave the house, she pick up herself and she gone through the door. And them times, well, I was brought up not to curse, not to swear, because I grew up in a Christian home. And but that day I did cuss, and I said, the reason why I leave the house is because as soon as you leave the house, he wants to me, right? And she lost it. She said, what? And I said, yes, that's what he's been doing every night as soon as you leave the house, and he wants to whatever with me. And she says, no, that's not happening. Then she pretended that everything was okay. But 3 months later, I found out I was pregnant. She was the one that asked me, what was going on with you? And I was 18 years old, but I was pregnant. And she decided, one morning she woke us up and she says, hey, start packing. And she left. She just walked out. When he came home the night, when her hubby came home the night, the house was empty and we were gone. But when I got more pregnant, she said, you can't stay here. And I said, so where am I going to go? I don't know anybody here. And it happened that the gentleman I was pregnant for, one time he had given me his mom's phone number and said, you can talk to my mom. anytime you want to talk to my mom about what's going on with you. And so I called her, and she basically took me in.
So
Hmm.
when you told your aunt what he was doing, because he was raping you, you wasn't giving him sex by consent. You, even though you was
Nope.
18,
Hmm.
you didn't consent to this. So this was rape. So when you told her what he was doing, she didn't say, "Hey, you know what? Let's call the police. Let me take you to the police station to make a report." Nothing like that happened.
No, 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 nothing like that happened, because when she heard that, she decided, I'm not staying, not in this house with him or my two girls, because she had two girls. I'm not staying with you or her or my two girls in this house anymore, right? But um the thing about it is that it was just awful.
Mm-hmm.
It was just awful. Like I said, my grandparents, when I was in the house, they didn't know anything that was going on. They had nothing, no, nothing that was going on. And like I said, my uncle was 6 years older than I was. So when I was 6, he was 12. And when I left home at 15, he was, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it was just painful. However, when um when I had my son, I ended up having my son, and when I had my son, uh, I was basically I was with his grandmother, and after a while, it kind of became that when I found out after, well, actually, long after, when my son was 18, that the reason why he didn't stay around when I told him I was pregnant was because he was married, and none of the family knew he was married.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't stay around. He did not stay around, right? Um, I grew up. I raised my child, and basically, and when he was young, I met someone, and this individual took him as his own child and raised him as his own child. My son didn't know he had another dad until he was 13 years old. And it was something that I went through. Um, I buried I buried it. I totally, from I was a kid, I buried everything so deep that um I wouldn't, if somebody had come to me probably and asked me if I was being molested, I would have probably say no, because I buried it so deep. I hid it so far based on what was said to me, right? And as I remember one day, I was home. By this time, though, when the whole thing came back up, and it was like I regurgitated it, everything came right back up. I was married, I had my son, and I had a daughter. But I got a phone call from Jamaica, and they said, "Do you have any information on molestation?"
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "That you could send me." And I said, "Why?" And they said, "Such and such a person has been molesting his daughter." When I say his daughter, it wasn't his biological daughter, but to me, that was his daughter, because he took his wife when she was 1. So that was his daughter. And when they said it to me, that he has done that to her to a point where she got pregnant, and he denied it when he was whatever. And this is the same person who did it to me. And apparently, he was doing it to other kids in the neighborhood, not just me, but to other girls in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
I remembered everything. I sat down. I cried. I cried. I cried. And I sent what I could, and I spoke to them. I spoke to them about her. Like, I still didn't tell my family anything. Still did not say anything as to the fact that he did it to me. But I remember going to Jamaica to a family reunion. And there were some things going on, and I was upset. And I took my mom, my aunties, and him, my uncles, and I sat them down and I said to them, one of my aunts asked me, why did you run away from home? Because when I ran away from home, my grandmother died. Why did you run away from home? Because you killed you killed my mother because she was fretting after you, and all of that was on me. All of that was on me ever since I was like when I ran away from home, and I kept running, right? But I said to them, this was why I ran away from home. And I told them everything that happened. Everything that happened from I was 6 with my uncle, my cousin, my dad, everybody. I told it to them. And my family sat there with their mouth wide open, not knowing. Some of them apologized to me because they hated my guts because I killed their mom. So as a child, I had to bear that burden that I killed my grandmother because they had no idea why I ran away from home. So it's just like I had to I had to grow up and grow up fast, right? When I sent the information to Jamaica and when I spoke to my family about what happened, that was when my healing begins. Something I should have said when I spoke to my family in Jamaica about what happened, I remember going to my brother's house the night after after I said what I said to them. And I remember crawling up to the top of his roof because you could, where he lived, he had like a step and you could go to the top. And I had a blanket and I laid down up there and I was just crying. I was just bawling my brains out. And he came up and he said to me, he called my name and he said, are you okay? I said, no, I'm not. And he said, I know. And he was crying. He said, I know every word you said tonight was true because I saw every night when it happened. I saw, but I couldn't say anything because I heard what he told you about us not having any mother. So it wasn't just me that was going through it. My twin was going through it also. And I told Unstoppable that I wasn't gonna cry. But as I thought about this, my brother was going through it with me, and I couldn't understand, even though we're twins, why we were so close. Even now, as adults, my brother and I are so close, but he kept that secret with me, and I love him so much. And when he told me that, because I thought I was the only one who knew, but he said no. Remember, Pat? Sorry, remember we slept on the same bed, so we were twins. So I knew, I saw everything that was going on, and I heard everything, and I cried when you cried. So I grew up, and like I hated this individual. I hated this one, my uncle, more than I hated anybody else. Trust me, I hated all of them. But this one betrayed me because he was supposed to be taking care of me, not not molesting and raping me. And so I hated them. And I kind of like I pulled away. Even when I became an adult, it caused problems in my marriage because I just didn't trust. I didn't trust men. I loved my husband, but I didn't trust him, right? Because of the experiences I had. Yeah, I had kids. I had a daughter with him, and then I had another son with him, but I just didn't at the time. And how I started healing was when I gave my life to God, and I went for counseling. I went for counseling. And I remember the counselor said, put a chair, and he said, sit down and talk to the individual. The person is not there, but talk to them. Tell it exactly how you felt. Tell them. And uh, time after time after time after time, I did the same thing. And then I started writing, and I wrote several times. I wrote to the perpetrators, and I said, this is how you made me feel. And as a kid, this is what you did to me. And I wrote, and I prayed. I had, my pastor sat down with me, cried with me, prayed with me, talked with me, became my dad. That's what he became, my dad. Up until this day, he's become like my dad. And um, I wrote, I remember writing something, and writing a book, and I wrote the first chapter, and I took it to him, and I said, read this. And when he read it, he cried, and he said, can one person go through all of that and still in their right mind? But I knew it wasn't me. It was the persistent. I decided I was going to make something out of myself.
Mm-hmm.
So then I had to. I had to. And it's like I went back to school again. Even um after, to be honest, because of what I went through, it broke my marriage. It did. It broke my marriage. And I ended up being a single parent with 3 children, and having to work, going to school, and all of that stuff with them. It's not easy. It wasn't easy then. And now when I see people going through it, it breaks my heart, because I went there, and I have used my experience to help other people. I've sat down with young people nights and cry with them and talk with them, and um, social workers, and everybody gets involved. Police gets involved. Everybody who has to get involved. But it still pained my heart, right? And so I was there for them. Like I said, I did a lot of praying. I did a lot of blaming. I blamed myself, because I said I should have known better. You should have known better. Why didn't you say something to someone? And those are the things I went through, blaming myself, saying I should have said something, you know. I should have told my grandmother. I should have told my grandfather. I should have told somebody what was going on. And so I went through the blame, and I got through it with counseling, and I went through it with that God was on my side every step of the way, every step of the way. And that's why I still have to serve God no matter what, because I know that God brought me this far, right? Um, I, after, when my marriage broke up, like I said, it's because of all of what went on with me, the rapes, the molestation. I know that messed it up. And I went back to school. I I did something, the course that would help um, other kids
Did you
that
ever
I
tell your
was,
husband the things that happened to you?
no,
So he never
no,
knew.
no, he never knew. He never knew anything. It was, like I said, he didn't know anything.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going to Jamaica when my daughter was, for her to celebrate her 16th birthday. And I said to her, hey, you see that house right there? Don't go down there. And when she was 18, I took her again, and I told her the same thing. When she was 21, I took her again, And I told her the same thing. And it was when she was older that I was able to sit her down and said to her, "Do you remember?" I said, told her what happened to me with the individual, because it was the individual's house, right? It was the individual's house that I told her not to go there. And when I said to her, this was what happened to your mom um, when I was growing up, I shared it with her and I told her everything. And she said, "Mommy, is that why you told me that I shouldn't go to such and such a person's house?" And I said, "Yeah, because I think I would have charged for murder. Because if he had touched my daughter, not only me, but I think everybody else would have, right?" And when I told her that, she said, "Mom, thanks so much." But, and she said, "Thank you so much for telling me what you went through." And I became what I became in order to help kids that has gone through and was going through what I went through, right? Um, I remember being who I was. I had so many choices of what I could do in my profession. And I said, nope, I want to work with these kids um, in person. I want, when they're talking, they can see, they understand why I cry. Because when I cry with them, they will know why I cry, right? And help them in whatever way I could. To this day, I have kids who have grown up that calls me mom, right? And because of the fact that I have helped them in whatever way I could and get them out of the situation that they were in. So it's not easy. And I may not cry a lot, but I cried when I was growing up. I cried as an adult. I cried because what I experienced messed up my marriage, right? Because I couldn't relate, because I didn't trust. And as much as I loved him, I still couldn't shake how I felt until I finally was healed from it, right? That I could go back to Jamaica and I could see the individual and I could talk to the individual, and the individual would say, "Give me your money," and I could give the person the money. And I did a lot. The individual was sick and I was there to help while the person was sick. The person died and I was able to go back to the funeral. Because why? I forgave. I forgave.
Before you forgave them, or even after you forgave them, did you ever
Hmm.
confront any of them about what they did to you?
I had given him a letter. My uncle, I gave him a letter with everything that he did and what I felt and everything. I gave him a letter and he denied it. He denied it to his grave. Yeah. He denied everything. He denied everybody that he molested up right to his grave. He denied them. He denied it. But because I forgive him and because I loved him as my brother and my uncle, and because of who I am as a Christian, I had to do what I did. I decided I was not going to let what happened to me destroy my entire life anymore. I was not going to let it happen. So I had to do what I had to do. I had to forgive him and I had to move forward with my life. And that was what I did. So there was no, at the end of the day when he died, I could honestly say I didn't hate him then.
Sad, right? Now, if you want to continue listening to the rest of her story, it's very easy. All you have to do is click the link that's in the description of the video. It will take you on over to Unstoppable Live, where you can continue listening to the rest of it in its entirety. While you're there, remember to hit that subscribe button, turn on all notifications. So once we go live, you will be notified. And if you're watching on Facebook, please remember to hit that follow button so that once we upload another recap over there, you will be there to participate. Watch out. Until the next Unstoppable recap, stay strong, stay motivated, but most of all, remain unstoppable.
Unstoppable. Unstoppable youth. Unstoppable youth.